What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of New Orleans Basketball, a New Orleans Network podcast. As always, I'm your host, Raphael Rattler, joined with my fellow middle brother, Garrett G. Money Rattler. What's poppin' with you, bro?
What up, bro? Things all good on this side, man. Enjoying some more recovery time because I'm still shaking back from Mardi Gras. But nah,
Love it.
man, I'm enjoying the basketball bonanza that's going on because obviously the NBA is pushing on. But it's my favorite time of the year. March Madness coming up. They're gonna have some good should be a loaded field on both sides. I'm really excited about the women's field with all of those stars all across everywhere with Hannah and them in Notre Dame, Paige and them in UConn. You got Juju holding it down at USC. You got the UCLA girls. It's gonna be popping. But of course, the men's tournament is gonna be interesting too. But for people who follow the Pelicans, there's going to be interesting for a multitude of reasons. Outside of the tournament, going to be a lot of prospects that are going to be out there. So obviously, Coop got hurt yesterday, but hopefully he's back. The conference tournaments are going on, so hopefully for the big tournament, he's shaking back and ready to compete. Obviously, there's some guys at Auburn and some guys at Baylor and BYU, so it's going to be some real interesting things. And then also, because I didn't do it last time, so I got to do it this time. Shout out to Unrivaled on a fantastic first inaugural season. The playoffs start this weekend, and I'm gonna be locked in. I wish I could be in Miami. Or I'd go to it. Obviously, my Miss didn't have a great season this year. But there's time for other things. My favorite going into this play, I think the Lunar Owls got it. I think Fee is just on a tear as the co-founder of the league, so I think she's gonna be on a tear. So it's gonna be good this week. So if you got a chance, check out the Unrivaled playoffs. It's gonna be really really fire. I think it's just 4 teams. And then they play a semifinal game and they go to the final. So it's gonna be really interesting, man. Really interesting. Can't wait for that. But outside of that, man, going to the Pels games, going to the Smoothie King Center, man. It's an interesting time to be in the Smoothie King Center. Let's just put it like that. Between Zion being incredible and then also not being able to play all the time, and now coaches possibly call the people in the team soft. And we'll get into all of that, but it's some very interesting things going on at the Smoothie Kick Center, man. But all in all, I'm good. How's everything on your side?
Yeah, I have been shaken back from the Mardi Gras flu, whatever it is. It put me on my ass. So I've been shaken back as well. Speaking of other ass, Arkansas did a phenomenal job of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory
I'm so
in
sorry.
the SEC tournament. Hopefully they can make it to the major tournament. But you're right. It's March Madness. If you're a basketball junkie, this is the best time of the year for you. The NBA is heating up. The Celtics are playing the Thunder and looks like what could be a finals preview. You're getting to that part of the year where basketball is at peak season. And before we get to the Pelicans and all that intertwines with them, make sure you guys follow us on X, on Twitter, on at NO_basketball, on TikTok, on any of your social media platforms. So the Pelicans officially, if I guess the last couple months just didn't count for you, the Pelicans are officially eliminated from the playoff hunt. Which is crazy. They're 10 games behind the Blazers for the 13th spot in the Western Conference, but leave it to the Eastern Conference to have a whole bunch of teams at the bottom jockeying for position in the Cooper Flags sweepstakes. But you don't have to worry about the Pelicans making a run or doing anything wild because now their season is officially over. And after a drumming by the Magic last night, let's just call it, it is what it is. It was kind of okay, this is the stamp on the season. This is the game that gets you knocked out. This is the game that eliminates you. It was kind of fixing in that way. I think that the game last night versus the Magic really brought up an interesting point. For weeks and weeks, and probably for months and months, if not years and years, on this podcast, we have talked about the Pelicans being a small team and being a team that struggles with physicality, right? Dating back years with Brandon, no matter who's on the roster, once you rivet the physicality up, which happens in the playoff, which happens throughout the regular season, which happens when teams want to make a run, which happens in third quarter, which the Pelicans have been awful at for quite some time. that's where the Pelicans outside of Zion kind of struggle. And last night, to the point where, Willie Green was asked the question, what do you make of the effort? The team have been doing better, have been playing better, gather rhythm. And then you come out in a game like this versus a bunch of athletes, sizable athletes on the other time. And he said, we got punked. We're soft. And didn't say anything else after that, which got me and you kind of talking off the pod to kind of talk about, well, are the Pelicans kind of too soft, right? Like in some ways, because one part of you want to lean on the fact that, yes, it's a young team, but even the young components of the team are smaller guys. Like Jordan Hawkins not a huge guy. Trey Murphy has put on some weight, but he's not the biggest guy. Herb Jones, not the biggest guy. DeJounte, go down the list, right? From that perspective. And I don't think it's so much that the Pelicans don't have fight or the Pelicans easily get punked. I think it's that they just don't have the size, right? Whether they've grown into their own body, even Yves Missi, Karlo Matkovic, even if you've grown into your own body, but they're also just not strong, big individuals. Where do you land on the topic? Do you think it is more, hey, they're younger guys being thrown around by grown men? Or do you think it's more of, hey, they need to get some bigger, tougher, stronger people?
It's my favorite quote. Only a Sith deals in absolutes. We don't deal with those here. I think it's a little bit of both. So first of all, if you think you make a good point about this being like a long time problem. We've been seeing the Pelicans deal with issues like this for a while. The game that I think about that really showing its teeth really was the Lakers game, the Lakers game in the in-season tournament last year, where the Pelicans were like this. They were the darlings. It was a swell. It was Zion versus LeBron. It was all eyes were on the team. And I think the very first play tip-off, they tipped the ball off, and LeBron went downhill and scored through Herb Jones. And I said on this podcast the day after we recorded after that, I said that ended the game right there, the first play of the game, because everyone knows that Herb Jones is the defensive stopper on the Pelicans. He is the guy. And LeBron just came out and put his shoulder in Herb Jones' chest, got an and one, and flexed on him. Even the best defender on the team is slight of frame. There's just a lot of slight of frameness across the board. You got a lot of guys who are lean, who like to play a lot of finesse game. Even when Brandon Ingram was here, it was a lot of that. These guys aren't soft. Like they aren't soft people. I don't think that like they're soft individuals. It's the fact that the team is not, they're not big, and so they can't impose themselves the way other teams can. For instance, the same way, if you look at what happened with the Clippers game when Zion played, right? Zion is a matchup nightmare for the Clippers because their power forward is Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi is one of the greatest defenders this generation has ever seen, but he's not 260. He's not 270. So Zion can do whatever. And if that's your best way to stop Zion, then you don't have a shot, right? Like we always talk about Aaron Gordon being like the prototypical guy to athleticism, quickness, and all of that. But if you don't have that guy, like to stand in front of Zion physically, then it's going to be a tough night for you. Paolo Banchero is quite literally the same thing for the Pelicans because he's too tall to really have his shot contested by the likes of Zion. And if Herb was out there, he would be too big for Herb because he's 250, 260. And so he's quite literally the exact same thing for the Pelicans. You throw in a Mo Wagner, you throw in, well, obviously he wasn't playing, but you throw in their team, Mo Wagner, Franz Wagner, Jonathan Isaac. That's a big, long, athletic team, and they just caused a lot of issues. But to Willie Green's point and to this topic at hand, it brings up an issue that has been going on for years. When you ratchet up that defense, when you ratchet up that intensity, the Pelicans have all since Zion was here I mean, Zion's been here, and before Zion was it really, they fold, and it rattles them a little bit. And I do think that it does have, if they had more guys who are bigger and stronger and more imposing, I do think that would, because they don't try Zion like that. It's not Zion. So, but these guys have to continue to grow. It's part of the growing process. But at the same time, you look at some of these other younger teams, they have, guys who will get in your face and yell and be demonstrative, like OKC. But they also have guys on that team like Lou Dort and Isaiah Hartenstein, like those guys who can be physical and be knock guys down. Look at the Rockets, completely young, super young. They got guys like Dylan Brooks, and you're not pushing around Amen Thompson, and you're not pushing around Steven Adams, and you're not pushing down Alperen Sengun. Like, you're not pushing these guys around. Whereas when you look at Karlo and Yves, who are the tallest centers on the team, but they're still very slight of frame. Paolo didn't even feel Karlo yesterday. You might as well just have had someone else, like a point guard out there guarding him. So these guys are slight of frame. They're young and they're growing into their body. Jordan Hawkins, if he could just go lock himself in an all-you-could-eat buffet for 2 days out the week. Every week during the summer, I think we could get somewhere. I mean, he's tiny. Like, these guys are small. Jose is the bark of the team, and God bless him, but I mean, he's tiny. So it's difficult to have these guys. And if Zion, if Zion is the one driving the force and he's the one bringing the force, then that's one thing. But there's other guys on the team, and if you can push up on Trey Murphy and get him out of his game and leave Zion out there to try to beat you by himself, then that's the issue you're going to have. So that's why, we've talked about this draft and coming up and things like that. I think there's some guys at the top who have an opportunity to be great for the Pelicans. But again, you're going and drafting another teenager, another young guy who's going to need time to get into his body and grow into his body. So, that might be something the Pelicans need to look into. Like we talked about, not obviously this guy, you won't be able to get this guy trade for him, but you brought up a guy like Bobby Portis, just a tall, just guy who can be the enforcer. You need someone like that on the Pels team right now. I think we can all say we miss guys like James Johnson, guys who just like, all right, let's just put him out there, and you ain't gonna try none of that with him. So I do think these guys have to grow into their bodies, but they also need to find that confidence in themselves and the confidence in their work, so that when the defense gets ratcheted up, that they can still continue to produce at a high level.
Right. The way I look at it, and you brought up a good point, like those are good players as well. And CJ McCollum's been asked this question throughout the course of the year, like, why are you guys not a good defensive team? Well, Herb's not available, DeJounte's not available. But to your point, it's not just you lose, a James Johnson, or you lose a vet that can stand in and be an enforcer. You lost Dyson Daniels, who looks like he should probably be first team all defense this season. You lost Larry Nance, who, again, is not the biggest player, but he's one of the stronger guys. So you could put against guys who are also stronger. You lost Anaji Marshall. That was your size. You lost your size that allowed you.
Jonas Valanciunas.
You lost Jake. That's what I'm saying. So you lost the guys that gave you the identity of what you are. And I'm not saying for whichever way that those players exited the roster were the wrong decisions. What I'm saying is you didn't replace them, right? You got smaller in a lot of areas intentionally in some ways. And so far, what the league is showing you in the direction this season is going, you're not going to be able to do that anymore. You've got to match the league is a copycat league. Everyone's got to be two-way, got to be able to score on one end, got to be able to defend on the other. But also, you can't be getting punked on the other way when you want to compete in some of these games. Something you brought up, which I think was a really good point, is that you've seen in the past that Brandon Ingram has struggled in situations like this. And you saw a little bit of that last night with Franz Wagner. You talk about Paolo Banchero being unstoppable. Franz hit like the first 8 shots in a row, and part of it was just him putting his head down and no one being able to stop him on the other end. So it wasn't just Paolo, it just the other players on their team. It was literally everybody taking their turn and saying that guy is not going to be able to stop me from getting to the rim. And so when you look at that and you look at what Trey Murphy's trying to do, again, you say like, why is Trey playing all these minutes? Or the Pelicans are eliminated from contention, sit everybody down, don't let anybody get hurt. God forbid somebody get hurt with meaningless games to go. But part of this is Trey Murphy has to figure out how to be a night in and night superstar. We've talked about this on pods before. Does he have the potential to be an all-star? Absolutely. Does he have the talent? Absolutely. Check mark. Every night he's doing reverse alley-oops every night. Like he has all that ability. But part of figuring out the game is figuring out when people are going to guard me differently, how do I respond in different ways? And Trey, to his credit, put on some weight and put on some muscle. And you see him use that weight and use his size periodically throughout games, but not consistently. And part of that, and now being the number 2 option and understanding when do I attack and when guys start grabbing, there were literally 2 hand holding Trey before every single play was inbound, every single time. And you can tell, you can see the frustration in his face. You can see it when he doesn't get the foul in his face. But guess what? That's what the playoffs are going to be like. So what are your thoughts on, how Trey's kind of learning he's getting his 20 points every night, but it looks like sometimes he's struggling to get there.
Yeah, I mean, Trey Murphy got the wake-up call to his face at the All-Star game. I mean, he walked up to the league MVP, as a correspondent in Nikola Jokic, and he said, "Drop 40 on us." You are now on the radar. You are you're not that third banana, and he caught us off guard because how could he get 40? Because we're guarding Zion and Brandon Ingram and got to worry about JV. No, brother, you are the Robin. You are number 2, and obviously with Zion on minutes restriction and not playing back-to-backs, you are the one at times. And this is life now, right? Like this is life now. And so again, the development of Trey Murphy, has been great, right? It's something that he should be applauded for and putting the weight on and all of that. Like all of that he should be applauded for. But like I said last time, it's there are jumps and levels to be made when you're talking about a young player and their development, right? There's a pool of guys that come in every year. Everybody's a rookie. And then there are guys who separate themselves and say, okay, they can play, right? Like even the numbers, they're not putting up 20 or whatever. And then they go to the next year and it's like, okay, they can contribute a bit more, right? Okay, so now you had the people who are scoring 20 and scoring 15. They contribute a little bit more. Then you're like, okay, and then the number gets a little bit smaller. Okay, so how many of these guys can now be efficient in it, right? Okay, so boom. So then another group of people make to separate themselves. And now these are the efficient players. You're in year four, and now you're efficient, right? So now from that group, you're like, okay, which one of these guys can be a driving force? So each one of these steps is a development in of itself. And Trey Murphy has had to jump from this step. Okay, well, we need you to be a shooter, but like on a good team, well, now everybody's hurt, so now you need to be the one option. And well, at the same time, we're gonna bring some guys back, so now you need to jump back and be a third option. Okay, Brandon Ingram got traded, so now you bumping up to the second option. Oh yeah, here's your contract. So he's never really had the elevator, the escalator steps to his development. And so now he's trying to figure out on a team that's not going anywhere. So everybody in the back of his mind is like, oh, I don't really want to get hurt at the end of this season and possibly miss out on anything next season. But I also need to put this together, and put this new role and executing this new role. But Zion is sometimes playing, so sometimes I'm asked to play off the ball, but then sometimes I'm not, and I'm on the ball, and He's just having to figure out a lot, as it's being passed on his plate. And so, again, the ending of this season and this season in its totality, once you kind of wrap your mind around the fact that the Pelicans weren't going to, get to their goals this year, this season was all about him figuring out as a number 2 option, especially now that Brandon Ingram is gone. Now you're the second in command. People are going to guard you differently. You're going to get grabbed. You're going to get held. You're going to do those things. And again, the fact that he's still putting up these numbers in the way that he's putting them up, just figuring it out on the fly without any kind of structure, not knowing who's going to be available night in, night out. I think that is a testament to his work and his development. And so, you want to give him applause for that. But the next step is to understand that, like, now you can't just fall back into shots when they're being physical. Like, you got to fight. You got to get to that line. You got to put even more weight on. Right now, you got that third banana weight on you. Now you need to go and get that second. And again, I said last episode, because of how their games are, because they're totally different. But I want him to go watch tape on guys like Jamal Murray, guys like Jaylen Brown, who at certain points, even though they're playing with Jokic and they're playing with Jason Tatum and they're playing with those guys, those elite level guys, sometimes you gotta go get it and do it yourself. Especially with a guy like Zion, he's gonna find you, he's gonna get you involved. He doesn't mind being unselfish. And I, for one, much rather have Zion trying to catch up with Trey Murphy's production in a game than the other way around, because I know Zion can handle the physicality. I know he can handle and get his game going whenever. It's just those games with Zion, you look up at the end of the first quarter and Zion has 17 points and the next person has 3. And you're wondering why the hell the Pelicans are down 15 points already. That's why. So he needs to understand that this is now life as a second option. Go into this offseason and address it as so. Put on more weight, continue to play through contact, work on handles, and you should be playing basketball in a box basically this offseason, because that's how you're going to be guarded now.
Right. I agree. I think, again, this is not a bash on Trey Murphy session.
Absolutely not.
You're watching the steps happen, right? And obviously you want them to happen faster. You have the exciting nights like you did versus the Clippers and stuff like that. You're like, ooh, that's what it could look like and things like that. But, like, again, growth is not linear in a lot of ways, right? And so how you manage that and what you're seeing in these games and this development, like I said, I don't think anyone on the Pelicans are soft. Like, they've gotten a lot of tough guys that are just smaller because of how they respond. Normally, when they get their ass kicked, the next game, they come out a little bit stronger. They come out a little bit on fire. When Trey was getting his ass kicked by Franz Wagner in the first half, and again, AD and Joel kind of talked about it. They're wings in this league. They kind of compare themselves against one another. They kind of think they're in the same tier. They're going to go at it. In the second half, Trey started hunting him right back, right? And that's what you want him to start the game with, right? To your point, you bring up a really good point about how he's been asked to play this role and that role and this role and that role. A lot of what these games are, the last 15 or so with Zion and Trey, is, to your point, yes, look at what Jamal Murray does and look at what Jaylen Brown does. But really, in order for the Pelicans to be what they need to be, Zion can't score 100 points a game, especially shooting 0 threes per game, right? Trey has to be just as aggressive getting to the rack. The difference in the reason why I think the pairing of Trey Murphy and Zion Williamson has a higher ceiling than the pairing of Zion and B.I. is because when Zion's on the floor, everybody knows Trey can shoot the ball, and he's that big of a distraction on himself. But what they're learning right now is when Zion's on the floor, Trey, you still got to get it. And then when Zion sits down, you better be the driving force consistently over and over again. And that's the learning curve. That's what the rest of this season's about. Zion talked about it in a post game a couple games ago. He's like, we got to take some of this momentum in the summer and stay together and start figuring out, Trey, this is where you want the ball here. Trey, when you got the ball there, do not look at me, go to the rim. That's what this time and this development is about with this particular duo. And again, from a Trey Murphy that you've seen come from a 17 pick in the draft and each season get substantially better, I only have faith that he's going to figure those things out this summer and going into next. Now, someone who's figured things out, listen, like we've talked about it time and time on this pod. Zion looks ridiculous. He's starting to get the here it comes, Garrick. Here, the media's back on. The Pelicans, what did we start this podcast in? The Pelicans are eliminated from the playoffs, yet the segment on First Take is Zion Williamson. He looks great, blah, 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 right? He's starting to get the media talking about, well, Zion looks great. It's in a minutes restriction. Now McAfee's like, now it's time to get him a new team and things like that. But here's what my question to you is. Like, what has been the biggest difference you've seen in his game, right? Like he's added a lot of different factors. We've talked about the defense. We've talked about his ability to kind of read the game and pass the ball, triple doubles and things like that. But what has been the thing that has been the most noticeable? He's been great every time he's been on the court in his entire career, but this just feels a little different.
Yeah. So two things for me for Z that really step out, and I'm there's really three, but I'm gonna let you talk about the third one because I know that's your specialty. The two things that I want to talk about. Number one is his feel for the game has kind of has gone a little underrated. Meaning the game against the Bulls, I tweeted about it. It was the most in control. I have my hand on everything game that I had seen from Zion in a long time, maybe in his entire career, where it just felt like he was pointing, even without the ball, was pointing people in directions on offense and on defense. There was a play in that game where the two people ran. It was him. He ran to get his spot on the floor right in front of the goal. It was kind of a fast break, transition bucket. Two people ran. It was him and another person, and he sealed his guy and told the other guy, run to the other side. The guard had the ball, was trying to get in the ball. He said no. He unposted, kind of got reposted, and then said throw the ball over him. Gave me the lead pass right into the bucket. So Zion orchestrated the whole possession from the post without the ball in his hand. I was like, oh yeah, that young man knows some basketball. So that is one of the things that I've seen. That he just seems to know where everybody's supposed to be. He's hitting people. Doesn't matter who's on the floor with him. He's hitting people in spots where they're comfortable, where they could be, productive. And I think that he's starting to understand his gravitational pull, what the responsibility that he bears as a franchise guy. I think he's starting to, and it's permeating on the floor. And you're seeing it in his feel for the game. But the second thing that I've really enjoyed this season watching Zion, and it's good for my health as well. I no longer, when I'm watching Zion, when I used to watch Zion play, literally every time he did anything going towards the basket, I closed my eyes and did like this. And like, I didn't want to watch because I knew he was going to try to jump through somebody, or he was going to try to jump and jump through somebody. And he was going to land on it weird. And then every time he played, I just was like, man, every time he fell, I'm like, oh. He has gotten a lot smarter with his attacks, with his launches, with his landings. He's starting to add like little runners, little push shots coming across the front of the rim. Yesterday, he hit like a little fading, leaning little push shot instead of going into the rim and jumping into Franz and Paolo and Jonathan Isaac. Now, I'm not doing all that. We float it over, do things like that. And slowly but surely, you watch Zion play and you're like, all right, like I don't really feel like he's going to get hurt every single time he gets on the court anymore. And, we haven't really been talking. If you've been paying attention to anybody, you haven't really talked about like, oh, Zion, that the tweaking of the knee and the injury and the hamstring, because he's not playing a game that's like conducive to injuries right now. Like he's playing it goes back to that feel for the game, the touch, the trusting of the shooting more jumpers, shooting threes, shooting fadeaways, shooting floaters and things like that, instead of just going bull in the china shop and launching and just figuring out how you're gonna land when on the way down. And I think that's going to keep him healthier. That's going to keep him more, off the ground and with more energy. And I think that's if he can get to the end of this season healthy and playing this way, this is going to do nothing but motivate him. He's already talking about what he wants to do in the offseason and getting guys together and sticking together. This is going to motivate him going into the offseason. If he can stay healthy and say, okay, look, it went left, but once I came back from this hamstring, I played, I balled out, and I realized that this is a way that I can stay healthy and stay available for the team. And so I've really just enjoyed his feel for the game and the way he's tweaked his close to the basket game. It's no longer just driving into the lane and jumping into people. He's adding floaters, and obviously he still does what he does. I asked Trey Jemison, he was still going there with reckless abandon. But he's starting to develop a little bit, touch things that he can go to and shots that he feels comfortable with around where he's not landing on his back or his leg or his knee or his hamstring and all of these weird contorted ways with all of that, that weight and that friction and that force. So those are the two things that really have stood out to me. There's a third thing, but I feel like you're gonna touch on that.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head. He's been in control, right? This entire time, whether on the defensive end, like there's been times where somebody's good, like in the Clippers game, Zubac, there was nobody. Again, we talk about lack of physicality. There's no more JB. There was nobody that could stop Zubac. Nobody. In the end of the game, in fourth quarter, when it's time to win, Zion's like, I got Zubac. So on one end, he's playing point guard. Now he's like, I've been guarding Kawhi all night and James Harden at times. Let me go guard the center. So there's like, I'm in control on the defensive end. And again, he picks times when to gamble and to use his size and strength. And honestly, if Zion's closing out at you, he can block your three-point shot. And I feel like a lot of people miss in those scenarios just because it's Zion the one jumping it. You talk about kind of having that feel as a rim protector. I think people feel that way at three-point shot. Man, if Zion lands on me, it's one of those things that you feel on the other end. And then on the offensive end, I've always said he's been a gifted passer. It's just you haven't seen it in a lot of ways because the offense hasn't been conducive to it. But the way he's orchestrating the game, to your point, on possession to possession, knowing where to be, knowing what time to get who the ball and things like that, that's the sign of a superstar. But for me, the number one thing that I've seen from Zion from a total standpoint is his mentality and his maturity. Like throughout the course of these games and throughout the course of this season, like he said at the end of last season on the post-game presser, I know who I am and I know where I'm going. Yeah, he hurt the hamstring, but if you look at like his body of work throughout the course of this season, he's only gotten better and better, and his response both on and off the court has only gotten better and better, right? His mentality, to your point on Trey Jemison, we've talked about this so many times off the pod. People who don't watch the Pelicans have this misconception that all Zion does is run to the goal and dunk over and over and over. And in reality, like the first couple of years of his career when he did play, it wasn't like Zion was dunking over and over. Yeah, fast breaks and loose balls and things like that. But it wasn't like he was like in-game Anthony Edwards, I'm trying to put you on somebody's poster in somebody's little kid's room. He's starting to do that again, right? He's starting to say, this is my time to ramp up the game and change the arena and change the vibe of my team. Let me go do it, right? I think he's the best player in the league. I've talked to somebody on Twitter about this. Like, other than De'Aaron Fox, with 5 seconds to go and you got to go from one end of the court to the other, give me Zion. Because no one's going to stay in his way. You're going to have to either foul or you're going to have to get really close to doing it every single time because he's going to get there with his size, speed, and quickness. And he's finding different ways how to control a game. Like the Lakers game, the Pels lost by 20. He had the plus-minus differential. Garrett, if he plays 40 minutes, he's the best player in that court, and Luka had a 30-point triple-double, and LeBron. It's just he didn't play as many minutes as them. He would sit down, and then all of a sudden the game would change, and then it was too late, right? And now you're starting to see that. I'm really interested to see if he plays in both games versus the upcoming Minnesota, in Minnesota. Because the last time you saw Zion and Ant, there was no love lost. Like, they were going at it. I'm interested to see if he has that same type of mentality because that's the biggest change. Like, he talked about after the game last week, he was like, I know it's tough to watch. We appreciate the fans for coming out, even though the season hasn't turned out. I know when I'm not available, the New Orleans feels some type of way. My plan is to become more and more. He was ducking kind of some of those questions before. He would kind of childishly laugh with some of those things before, but now he's like, I'm taking accountability. I know what's in front of me. He talks about Jose puts his little bitty body on the line every single night. How am I not going to do it too and be available for this team? So many people are attached to me and my success. How do I make myself available? You're starting to see those things, right? And that's the biggest change that I've seen in Zion's game. To your point, the counters are coming. He's shooting more middies. He's knowing how to get, other than just turn over right shoulder over time, over and over and over again. He's figuring out different ways to score, but it's his control and his mentality, his approach to the game that has just jumped off the page so far for me. So to your point, can he make it through the rest of the season healthy? And then how do you build from here? How do you make it so that you think you're seeing the best Zion now? Wait till you see the beginning of next season. Because we talk about the minutes restriction, and part of this is, it's frustrating for everybody, for fans, for the team, for him, and things like that. But the way that he plays, like, if he's playing 40 night, like the Knicks players playing like 40 minutes a night, stuff like that. If he plays stuff like that, he's going to get tired based off the way that he plays. So the Pels and Zion are trying to figure out, how do you stay Zion with a superstar workload, right? How do you give me triple doubles that are 40 points and 20 rebounds and things like that because you're able to sustain it? I think part of that is this. I think that's what these last couple of games have been. His minutes has continued to increase over the last couple of games. I think part of that is figuring out, okay, they're saying you're at 265 now. Do I need to get to 255 to be able to doing this over and over and over for 40 minutes a night? Because I think Zion has that type of potential. So again, the trade rumors, just wait. We got how many weeks to the draft? I'm sure Zion's name will be a part of it in some reason, but again,
it's coming.
Based off what you've seen, I don't know how either one going to get the value back for a player like this, but two, you could say now's the time to trade Zion.
You think you've seen trade rumors before? If you're listening to this podcast, write this down because it's coming. Luka is now in LA, and LeBron will be retiring soon. Write it down. You heard it here first. It's coming. It is the storybook, the narrative is coming. Oh, it's definitely coming. It's definitely coming. I'm just putting it out there.
I think you might be on to something there. So we talk about potential and we talk about the narrative, and the narrative going into the season was the Pelicans have no big men. Turns out they actually have two of them, and they're pretty good, right? So let's talk a little bit about Karlo and Yves Missi. And again, the results are what they are. We talked about their deficiencies in that their lack of experience and their lack of size. But when you look at their production, Karlo's had 3 games in a row in double digits. Last night was a rough one. He had to start versus Paulo, and that didn't go well. Yves Missi is averaging damn near a double-double. I look at Wendell Carter, who got a contract extension before the season started. Yves Missi has better stats than him. I look at other players around. Nick Claxton, $25 million a year. I'm like, I'd rather Yves Missi on that contract from that standpoint. And now you're seeing Karlo Matkovic kind of step out of his shell a little bit, get a little more confident underneath his belt. My question to you, can there be a situation where as you move forward in the summer and the team continues to grow, this kind of be like an interchangeable type thing? Because Karlo's impacting the game in a lot of ways as well.
Yeah, I think there is there are actually lineups that I like that work a lot better with Zion at the 4 and Karlo at the 5. Like right. I've seen lineups like work that way. So it goes to show you the amount of flexibility that those two guys at that size and those two skill sets. Karlo being able to step out away from the floor, and Yves just being a dynamic rim runner, rim wrecker, and rebounder. I think that those two they work well together. I think that the Pelicans could probably use one more big guy, and I mean, obviously Kelly Olynyk, it would be the perfect guy. Like again, another big guy who can kind of be mobile and stretch the floor for Zion and rebound and be tough and be big. Another guy like that. But those two guys in particular, with them being as young as they are as well and inexperienced as they are, and the fire that they've really been thrown into. I think, what you've seen this year, you gotta be impressed with what you've seen this year and be excited for what's going to happen. Again, people have to remember that this is Yves like third, fourth year playing basketball, period. Not in the NBA, not like playing the game of basketball. He didn't pick up the game of basketball till late. And Karlo he was a drafted stash guy and had been between coming and playing in the, being on the team last year, but not really playing to starting. Like he's just getting his NBA feet underneath him as well. And so I think, they have a lot to work on this summer. I think they both obviously need to hit the weight room. They need to get bigger. They need to get stronger. And I think yesterday was a good showing to Karlo that, like, man, listen, like, it's one thing to be out there and have Zion and Yves and guys to bang, but this is the Pelicans, baby. You're gonna have to bang by yourself a couple of times. People gonna be hurt. People not gonna be playing. And so you have to be able to bang and not get pushed around and things. And so I think that was a good, wake up call for Karlo again. As he continues to grow in his role, that he needs to get bigger, that these guys need to get bigger. They need to get in the weight room. They need to get stronger. And I think that Karlo needs to work, get bigger and get more active on the offensive end. I think, he's showing some things that he's stepping out and he's doing the things, but there's still some times where I'm like, man, you can shoot it. You can take it. You can take the ball to the rim. No, you're 7 feet and can dunk on people too. You can be forceful as well. Same thing with Yves, and Yves more so just get more comfortable being explorative for yourself on the offensive end. I mentioned it happened yesterday. I mean, not yesterday, the game before, where I was like, I'm watching him and I'm like, man, he looks like somebody that you tell him what to do, and like they do exactly that, and that it, right? Like once you come up and set this screen, if I give you a dribble handoff, turn around and look for the guard. Now, if there's nobody in front of you, you can go to the rim and dunk it. Like, but he doesn't get that part. So I need him to get a little more comfortable on that part. But I do think these two guys, if keeping them together along with Zion, and again, you don't make excuses. But DeJounte has some real chemistry with Yves early in the season. And I think that Karlo and DeJounte would have some really good pick and pop chemistry. And he can do a lot of things with those guys. Obviously, Zion has been kind of the driving force to get, and CJ obviously giving the ball too. But I think Zion has been a driving force of getting those guys shots, getting those guys the ball. I just think having another ball handler who is comfortable making those passes, I think that would help those guys a lot more as well. And even a guy like Herb can get down the floor and get some drop off passes to the dunker positions that, with Karlo and Yves there too. So I do think, having more ball handlers and having more guys able to set them up. Obviously, Zion is a great passer, but after that, CJ is looking for a bucket. Trey is looking for a bucket. Like most of those guys are looking for buckets. Jose is the only guy that's like passing the ball and getting them the ball as well. So I do think having some of those more ball handlers and people who are comfortable passing the ball, I think that'll help them for sure. But I do think you should be very, very impressed and looking forward to the next couple of years of this growth of the tandem of Yves and Karlo.
Yeah, I agree with that. And they brought Mo Bamba in on a 10-day, and he's played a couple games, scored his first basket the other night. Like, for me, I love the idea. I love the idea of continuously bringing in 7-foot-tall guys who can space the floor at times, but then also can rim protect, keep taking shots at it, especially if there's no risk involved. But, like, to me, I just think, like, he's a little bit slower to react to things. And I think that you need a more active big to complement Kelly Olynyk and Karlo and Yves Missi and kind of have that quadrant of committee center by committee in different aspects. What have been your thoughts and what have been your reactions from Mo Bamba so far?
I mean, he's a he got a song made after him. Shout out to Sheck West, man. Shout out to Sheck West. I mean, he's fine. I mean, I think I agree with you. I think you need more of he's more of a like system player. Like he like you need more proactive bodies, guys who are like to hell with the system, like get up and down and run and do things like that. I think a guy like, what you saw at what's his name, Paul Reed from like the back in the six, like that, those type of guys would have been those type of guys are more active and more want to do things on the offensive end and the defensive end. But I mean, again, he's a 7-footer who can hit he took 2 threes. I think he took 2 or 3 threes, whatever. So he's comfortable taking them. So I he's fine, and we'll see how he continues at the end of the season. But I don't really have a sweeping opinion about Mo Bamba.
Fair enough. Now you mentioned and brought up the fact that a lot of Yves' development, a lot of Karlo's development is kind of being hampered by DeJounte not being available, by Herb not being available. And again, like it's been very obvious. Yes, the Pelicans have been horrible on defense most of the year, but that like outside of Zion, now that Brandon Ingram's gone and Trey Murphy, there's not a whole lot of guys that can score or create different types of offense outside of a CJ McCollum. Well, now since the Pelicans are eliminated, Bruce Brown, CJ McCollum, older vets, you're looking to see more of the younger guys play a little bit more, right? Especially now it's like, hey, we have the excuse that we can't make the playoffs. Let's get some of these younger guys some more minutes. The guy that we've been waiting to kind of turn on, the hot water to turn on all season long, Jordan Hawkins, is starting to finally get a little bit more rhythm, right? And we understand he's been dealing with the back issue. And Jose talked about it, like, you guys don't know how painful that is, to be a shooter. And again, there's a history of shooters that have back issues, to be a shooter and try to fight through that all season long. And that's the thing that's holding him back from, again, he was the summer camp darling that it wasn't Brandon Ingram, it wasn't Zion. He was the summer camp darling that the whole team, including Willie Green, was talking about. And you haven't seen that production so far this year. Now that he's double digits in 4 straight games, and now he's starting to get a little bit more efficient with the shots, are you seeing Jordan Hawkins come around, and what are you looking for him these next 15?
Yeah, just keep shooting. I just want to see him get a couple of consistent games like we've seen him these last 4 games. Get some more consistent games under your belt. The back issue is really tough to deal with, especially with a guy who is running through screens and constantly running all day long. He is a ball of kinetic energy. Jordan Hawkins never stops moving on a basketball court. And to be having to navigate all of these big bodies and going through screens and people trying to knock you off your path a little bit. And obviously when you're jumping to shoot, a guy like him who jumps so high on his jumper, you never know how you're going to come down. You're focusing on the release and the shot and the rim. You don't know whose feet is underneath you. And you see him fall a lot, right? He gets fouled a lot on 3-point inside. So it is a something, and he talked about something he's been dealing with since college. And so it's something that, he has fought through, and obviously the NBA is an unforgiving league, and it's all about production and what have you done. So, obviously you can't use that as an excuse if you're going to be out there on the floor. But it is something that he is dealing with, and it's obviously affecting him. And so I just want to see him put together some consistent games, right? Have a couple of more games where obviously he's shooting 7, 8, I think, or 8 threes a game. Like, hit a couple 5 for 8s, get up to 6 or 10 for a game or 2 in a row, and see if you can put some of those together, because I think he is paramount to this team, because he is one of the knockdown shooters, and a movement shooters, and guys who you can put an offense around for 2 or 3 possessions where he's just running around screens and taking threes and doing things and not needing the ball in his hand a while. And again, my favorite thing about Jordan Hawkins, I've been saying it for 2 years since he got drafted, is his rebounding. And he's in there banging and grabbing boards and helping the Pelicans on the boards. That takes a lot out of you as far as banging and jumping and out jumping people and getting in there, especially when you're so accustomed to be at the 3-point line. And of course, his chase down blocks. Like, this guy's an athlete. Like, he needs his back, because he's not just a guy who stands still and catches. He is a guy that's constantly moving. And I don't know if you've ever tried to run with a bad back, but it's not fun. So I just want him to see him put together some consistent games. get a couple of these big three. If you can't get a couple of these big 3-point performances, so that going into this season, you can go into this offseason when you lock it in with Zion and all of those guys, and and finding where you guys can work well together on the floor. That you're able to have, some of these games to look back on and say, well, listen, this was effective. This is how it worked for me, as opposed to saying, well, I fought through back injuries all the time. Like, let's now find some things out. So, use these last couple games, get the shots up. They are non-consequential. If anything, the ones you make have more consequences than the ones you miss. If you talk about draft lottery standards, but I think, get the shots up, get some consistency down, and go into this offseason knowing, and trusting the work that you put in.
Right. The thing for Hawk and again, I'm sure that there's some balance for the team too, right? Like, all right, this guy's got back problems. We don't need to play him 40 minutes a night in meaningless games. So, like, it's part of that too. But, like, for me, like, if you're going to watch CJ's minutes and you're going to watch Bruce Brown's and probably Zion's to some degree as well, like, there was points in the season and last season where, like, you were running offense for Hawk. Like, not just Hawk is on the three-point line or Hawk is running transition, calling for the ball over and over. The play is designed to go to him. And if he is going to be the CJ replacement, or if Brandon Ball, whoever it's going to be, you want to see what some of that looks like now. Like the thing that I'm noticing from him, and you pointed out, yes, he's always rebounding, and yes, he's getting chased down. The team feels more athletic when he's the shooting guard on the court, right? Like they're running up and down. They're in transition. He's dunking the ball on the other end. Like that. That feels like an athlete. That's like a Ray Allen type fit. Like, it's not just hey, this is a shooter. All he does is shoot. He can't do anything else. Like, you're feeling his athleticism a little bit more. And for me, how do you create for yourself, right? Like, he's known to be a movement shooter, and that's something you want to see paired with Zion and with Trey and things like that, because that's different ways to generate offense. To your point, when you have a real point guard on the court, like a DeJounte Murray or someone you might draft, or Zion on the court, it doesn't have to just be Zion go score and then pass it out to someone. It can be this time down, we're looking to get Hawk going. We're looking to do this and this and this. That's what I want to see more. Can you be more than just a catch and shoot player? You're starting to see him do one, two dribbles and get to the midi. You're starting to see him get to the lane, get to the foul. You're starting to see him do some of those things. Be the scorer. If you're going to be the sixth man off the bench, it can't just be, well, I need someone to pass it to me in order for me to score, right? And so you're starting to see a little bit more out of that in this game. And, like, that's what I'm looking for these next however many games. What can you do to add in the ways you can score? Because that's what the team is asking of you. And so I think for Hawk, it's good to see some good games back to back to back, because he's been struggling with that. Now it's like, okay, how can you finish the season healthiest that you can, but then have some momentum to build off after a tumultuous season? So with that, all that being said, again, the Pels are officially eliminated. Start looking at the March Madness. Start looking at who's coming up in the draft lottery. It's that time of the year for the Pelicans. With that being said, the Pelicans play in San Antonio tomorrow in another meaningless game. Hopefully everyone stays healthy. What you got left for the people, Garrett?
Yeah, as always, you never know what people are going to, so give someone a smile today. What up, West Bank Rick? What up, Bird? Yes, West Bank Rick. I am also on that Daredevil as well. Shout out to Matt Murdock. And shout out to the White Tiger. But yeah, man, I think this is an opportunity for the Pels to, again, continue to collect data. You want to see the Pels put, some things together. Who's ever playing, right? And it's the younger guys. Obviously the playoffs are not going to be in your future this season officially. But it is still an opportunity. The season is still there for you to get something out of it. And I think, Zion talked about wanting to get something out of this season regardless. And so having, the guy, the leader, still want to play in games, still want to get some data and Trey following suit, I think it's going to be a good mentality for the young guys to follow. So as always, follow myself at Garrick_Rattler. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page at NO_basketball no E. That's on Twitter. That's on X, whatever, Instagram, wherever you get your social media. Most importantly, subscribe to NewOrleans.basketball, and we'll see you guys next time. Hey,